So, hello everybody! Welcome to my channel, Mind, Body, and Soul Singing, where I help singers like me and Charlotte obtain physical, emotional, and spiritual freedom in our voices. And welcome to my MTD recovery series, where I just have open, honest chats with people in recovery with their muscle tension dysphonia. So, Charlotte, I would love to hear your story. I discovered you because you're amazing for putting together a PDF that like really helps people.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. Um, yeah. I made this PDF, um, I think around this time last year, or maybe like 10 months ago. And it was basically just an accumulation of a bunch of things that I have learned. I was pretty involved in this Facebook group, like a muscle tension dysphonia Facebook group. And I was surprised to find a lot of stories like mine. But in a lot of cases, it was like way worse. I mean, people couldn't even speak. There were a lot of people that had recovered and were still pretty involved in posting. And there were also people that had a lot of different opinions on things. And, this works or this doesn't work. And I thought that that was really interesting, because I know the amount of time that I spent trying to like figure it out or trying to find, the thing like that's going to make me, it's like, this is it. I finally found it. And I think as humans, like, we all just want to find the answer and we want to reach the end of our problems. And we like to wrap things in a nice, neat bow. But in reality, a lot of times there's multiple causes, multiple issues, and thus there's multiple solutions. And
yeah.
so for me, when I made that, it was basically just an accumulation of these different strategies I learned that had helped me at different points over the past few years, or that could potentially help others. And I think it's really tough because, and this is even something that was emphasized by my speech therapist. I had three, by the way. In total, I saw three different clinics. Um,
Yeah, I saw three as well.
yeah, I saw three different speech therapists, and I saw five different doctors. So the
Yeah.
other two were ENTs.
Can you start from the beginning and tell us our story, and then we can get into the PDF, just so
Yeah,
like people know your journey? Because I think a lot
yeah,
of times, a lot of the journeys are similar. I already
yeah,
can tell. Like I had to go to three as well. So.
yeah. So for me, when I was 15 years old, I attended this singing camp, and on the first day, my vocal instructor there, he kind of pushed my voice up, pushed the range in the song that I was singing. And that's kind of when I damaged my voice a little bit, like blew out my vocal cords, as I would say. This has happened like throughout my entire life. Like maybe if I went, like I was a kid and I went to a block party and I was screaming, I would kind of blow out my vocal cords, right? I'd scream too much, but then I'd be fine the next day or 2 days later, I'd be back to normal. But I had to keep singing for hours a day. And I did a lot of lip syncing as well to try to get back, but I still had to sing. And then the camp ended and it was fine, but I noticed this breathiness in my voice, and maybe a month later or so, and it kind of just persisted, this breathiness. I told my voice teacher about it, but she said that she didn't hear it, but I'm not an idiot, obviously I could hear it. And so that was kind of the concern. I went to an ENT that my primary care doctor recommended, and he diagnosed me with acid reflux. So I spent like the next
Same.
maybe 9 months doing all of this stuff, doing diets on and off, but it never did anything. And then I was like, oh, it's just because I can't commit. And then I went back to the singing camp a year later, and she told me, one of the other instructors there, she was like, you need to see this New York doctor. She is so great. She works with so many people. Go see her. So I went to see her. She's an ENT of sorts. And she diagnosed me with like yeast, that I have yeast on my vocal cords, which I did. And I went on this yeast-free diet a few times, but it turned out to be pretty irrelevant. And at that point in time, I also started experiencing pain, like soreness, like a lot of soreness in my throat and my tonsils, just from eating all the time. And that's what I thought the reflux was, but it really wasn't. And so then I ended up getting, and I also had a ton of congestion as well at this point. So I had congestion and I had soreness in my throat, and I ended up getting a double surgery. I got tonsillitis and, what is it called? A reduction of the interior turbinates. So my tonsils were removed, and I got, like, right here was sliced open to, like, let some of the stuff out. And it was, it was pretty intense. I didn't have to stay overnight in the hospital, but I went to New York and I did all this pre-patient stuff, and I went under anesthesia for the first time. Like, it was a lot. And then 2 weeks after my surgery, nothing changed. I still had issues. I was like, what the fuck? And I was really sad. But then I talked again about it with my voice teacher, and she was like, I feel like I've neglected you, which she was, in a way. I mean, like, I wasn't crazy. I'd been having problems with singing. And she recommended me to go to this doctor that she knew, the speech therapist in New York. And she was very not traditional. And she diagnosed me with muscle tension dysphonia. And I knew when she diagnosed me that I had the right diagnosis. I was like, okay, this is it. Because it actually made sense about where the breathiness would be coming from. Not just like, oh, there's a yeast or there's a reflux, Like, I saw my vocal cords and their inability to fully close.
Yeah.
And so she kind of did that. And then I went with her like a bunch of times, missed a lot of school, went to New York. And then it was good. I was making progress, but COVID hit. And a lot of our work together was very physical. And when COVID hit, it was like, oh, it's 2 weeks. Oh, it's 2 months. Like, it's nothing. And then it ended up being 2 years. And we didn't really kind of see each other. And we tried a few remote stuff. Didn't really work. But I just kept continuing on with the sessions. And then it was my freshman year of college, and I was still struggling. And I was like, I thought I reached a point where I was back to normal and I could do normal singing exercises again. I mean, at this point I was doing straw stuff and all this crazy stuff and breathing and tons of stuff and tons of massages, etc. So I went to a speech therapist or voice therapist, whatever you want to call it, speech pathologist in Boston at Boston Medical Center. It's supposed to be really, really great.
That was my first speech therapist, and it wasn't good for me at all.
But the issue is that the doctor that they had for singing could only work on Tuesdays.
Yeah, that was my issue too. Like, I saw her like once a month. It was like so random, and I was confused all the time.
I couldn't even get like regular scheduling in for these appointments. And so that was really, really frustrating. And I did see improvement, but it was just very, very slow. But I did see some improvement. And it was just so interesting too, because when I went into these sessions with these doctors, I felt so hopeful and confident again, because they seemed very confident. But at the end of the day, it's like, nothing gives you more hope than improvement. And if you're not seeing improvement, you start to not believe anymore the same way the doctors do.
Mm-hmm.
And so my sophomore year of college, still doing the exercises, I am seeing improvement, but I'm starting at this point to really struggle with physical tension. Like just tension in my voice and in my throat when I speak. It was triggered when I spoke. And I thought that it was a physical issue because, it felt physical. And it just kind of got worse and worse throughout the year, throughout sophomore year. And then I was like, this is great. When I go home from college, I'm going to be alone. I won't have to talk to my friends as much. Um, and so I was like, I'm going to go home and I'm going to heal, and this is going to be perfect. And that is not what happened because I did keep with the physical tension, and I would speak and then it would stay. And then um, at the time, I had started dating this girl who I knew, and for a while, and we dated for like 3 weeks, and then broke up for the summer because in my mind, I was like, I don't want the pain of being long distance. I don't want the pain of missing someone, completely cut each other off. And the day after that happened, I started to experience physical pain, squeezing physical pain around my voice right there. It's like the worst kind of pain I've ever experienced. It wasn't very strong, like I broke an ankle. It wasn't that kind of pain, but the location of the pain was very much like it's an extremely uncomfortable feeling. It felt like I was being choked. And and it was the kind of pain that, again, triggered by speaking, except this time didn't go away. And so that is when I started my journey with physical pain. And I ended up realizing pretty soon, actually, because again, I went to another speech therapist this time. I went in New York City because that's where I was at the time. And again, it's supposed to be great practice. And I actually do think it was, but a lot of my issues at this point were related to this physical pain, and I actually asked my speech therapist, she was the one that helped me realize, I was like, can stress be caused by, like, or can stress cause MTD and whatever? And she said yes. And then I said, okay, but I'm not stressed. And then the next day, or the next time I saw her, I ended up like bawling in front of her office just about a lot of different things that were going on. And I kind of realized that that this pain was from emotional stress and emotional suppression and pain. And it was kind of like my MTD tension had turned into this physical pain that is kind of related, but also not related. I mean, it's still all in my voice and face and mouth area, so of course it feels very related. But it was so defeating that summer. I mean, it was so defeating and it was so painful, and I was so unhappy, and it was like a battle every day. And I had no control over it. But the exercises that speech therapist did actually help me, but it obviously didn't help me with the pain. So I met with my therapist and we talked about it, and it was helpful. And then I got back to college in August, and I realized that what triggered that onset of my pain was breaking up with that girl and just cutting her off like it was nothing, you know? And looking back, the first time that I felt real pain, real tension, not pain, but real tension when speaking, the first time that I felt that was the night when I started to lose one of my friends from freshman year in a very unnecessarily dramatic way. And so throughout this past year, my junior year of college, it was on and off, the pain. It was in different locations. Like if it was in my cheeks, it was very manageable and I would kind of just ignore it. And so it wasn't really an issue. I didn't get a lot of that terrible pain here, thankfully. Um, but I had a lot of issues feeling emotionally blocked around this girl because I did start dating her again. We did get back together, but I had a lot of issues feeling emotionally blocked. And the only thing that would really ever take my pain away was crying. So I did that a lot. Um, and then I started doing some research and I found this book, Freedom from Pain, that I started reading this past semester in January. And I also started doing this exercise called titrations, which is kind of where you think back to a moment that was maybe traumatic or something like that, and you think about how it felt, like physically and stuff, and kind of enter into that space. And I did that, and it was helpful, and I was able to feel a lot less blocked around her, which was great. And then once the school year started to approach, or the end of the school year started to approach, I started experiencing pain again every second of every day. Like, it was just this constant pain, not terrible, but there's this underlying pain in my chin, especially. That's the big area where it is now. Maybe in my cheeks, but usually in my chin, in my tongue, right? Like in the back of my tongue, kind of squeezing, something like that. And again, I thought when I would leave college, it would be fine, and the pain just continued and continued. And even when I was relaxed, like no stress at all, I'm not stressed at all, I was relaxing at home, pain. And so I went back to a Facebook group. This time it was for somatic symptom disorder, which is what I was struggling with, kind of. And I saw this comment that recommended this podcast called The Cure for Chronic Pain. And so far it has been life-changing. And it's with this doctor called Nicole Sachs. I believe she's a doctor.
I listen to her podcast too.
You know who she is? Yeah.
And she does the TMS work that Alan Gordon does. That's
Right.
changed my life, because you're talking about pain that moves around. It's emotional pain, and the body is very clever. And like
it is.
It's saying that like it's easier to actually have physical pain than to actually sit with your emotional pain. Like your body's actually trying to protect you by having these pains.
And when she said that, it was like, and as I've started to do some of her work, like her journal speak work, I'm gonna start her inner child work soon, which is, kind of what I'm getting to. And if anyone watching is confused about any of this, you can just go to her website, thecureforchronicpain.com, and it'll explain what journal speak is. But it's a type of journaling. And as I've been doing this, I've really realized that, like, my brain and my nervous system, they do think that physical pain is easier than emotional pain, and it's hard to say I disagree. And obviously, I need to, I want to heal from this physical pain, and so I have to do this work, which is hard work, and really confront a lot of this stuff from my past and things that I've suppressed over the years. But I realized this kind of pretty soon when I was listening to the podcast, that it's more than just, confronting some things from my past, which is what I did in January. It is changing who I am, because over the past few years, I have become so hardened up, and I can feel that I've become so hardened up. And like, when I do work and I grind, it's very much like grind set and just very tough and cool and, bro, and so much of my emotional and sensitive side gets neglected. And like, even when I think back to when I was a young kid, I have this memory of going to this funeral of this lady I didn't know, never met, and I was crying because it was just so sad to me that she was dead. From a young age, I've just been naturally very sensitive to that stuff, and I went through some tough shit my senior year of high school. And then I went through that loss of that friend that I told you about. And then I went through this breakup with this girl, and then we started dating again. But before we started dating again, she told me she didn't know if she could be in a relationship because she was actually really hurt from the summer. And that was like just so so painful, such a hit to my heart. And I also lost my grandparents. They died during COVID, and it was like a torturous death in a way. Like, so it was tough. And so a lot of these things that, while I did cry at the time, it's not like I didn't cry at all, I did, but it just went a lot deeper. And it kind of changed who I am in the way that I process emotions and pain. And I can already feel like the change in who I am and approaching that.
Mm.
And something big for me too was the idea of compassion. Now, for the past 3 years, my therapist told me, you need to be more compassionate with yourself. You're so hard on yourself. And I never understood
Yeah, me
that.
too. Yeah.
Um, yeah. And I was like, I am compassionate. I love myself because I do. Like, I think I do love myself. I don't think that's something I struggle with, insecurities. But I soon realized, maybe a few weeks ago, even not that long, that, oh my gosh, like this is what compassion feels like because I was listening to this podcast and I like did it for myself, put my hands on my heart. And I was like, this is so different from anything that I've ever done when thinking about all of my hurts, right? And all of my pain. And so I am on my way and I am healing from a lot of things,
Mm.
and including my pain. And so much of that is really thanks to this podcast because I like the freedom from pain stuff, that book that I read, but a lot of the exercises are very much focused on the pain itself, which
Mm.
is actually pretty irrelevant. Like, and I would do that in moments. I would be like, all right, I have a lot of pain in this moment. What does that mean? Did anything just happen? It's at this point, it's irrelevant. And
Yeah.
I had this change of mindset a week ago where I was like, you know what? I am not going to get worked up, right? Because as she says, chronic pain is an epidemic of fear and meaning. So if I'm in a lot of pain, which I haven't even been the past week, but if I'm in a little bit more pain than usual, I'm just gonna still stay at peace. I'm still gonna stay calm. And there's been times where I haven't even noticed if I had some pain, or I haven't even noticed if I wasn't in pain. And I've had that change of mindset, and I've also been doing a lot of the work because it's deeper, it's more underlying. It's not, I'm like, I'm in LA right now and nothing is happening, obviously. Nothing's going on that would trigger my pain. It's just a pattern now. That's how my brain processes a lot of things. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's been a really key mindset for me, not being afraid to be in a little bit of pain or in more pain, like moderate pain. And I do feel really good about where I am headed. And I do know the necessary changes that I have to make. And I'm trying not to put too much pressure on myself because that is something I do with everything.
Mm-hmm.
And my singing has been the best it's ever been. It's not where I want it to be yet, but I started again another mindset, which is like the idea of radical acceptance, where, you know, I may have had issues, but I never lost my ability to sing. I could always sing. I just couldn't sing the way I wanted to, or I just couldn't sing well. So kind of just accepting my voice for where it's at and loving it and knowing that I'm still on the journey, right? There's no end. There probably won't ever be an end, right? We're always on the journey of life. And that's that. That's my
Yeah.
story.
It's so incredible to see. I think you're young, right? How old are you? If you don't
Almost
mind.
21.
Yeah, yeah. So you're very young, and I'm 37, and the journey you're talking about is,
Really?
yeah, is the journey I've been going down as an older person. Uh, and I can. your story like is my story completely. And you're saying like I discovered this book. I forget the name of it. If I remember, I'll link it. But it's saying you don't just have physical tension as a human. You have like physical, emotional, and spiritual tension. And I could go on and on. You know, like mindset is very important. And yeah, we think we love ourselves, but if we're very hard on ourselves, and yeah, grinding as a lifestyle and
Yes.
judging and having these rigid expectations that are incredibly high and unattainable, that creates like physical symptoms in the body because it's not kind and soft, it's rigid and painful and tight within itself.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, and to not
I
obsess over
think,
the pain. I was like, go ahead.
no, no, no. I was just gonna say, I think that kind of just what you were saying, like the connection of the physical and the emotional is really is really important to understand. And it's something that, Nicole says, like, how can an emotional exercise cure my physical pain? But it absolutely does.
Yeah.
And mindset is really, really important, even when singing too. Like
Hmm.
when I'm singing and I'm realizing that it's not even, I've been doing the same exercises for months, for years. It's not like physical so much. A lot of it is approaching singing from a mindset, right? That's how you can access like the muscles that you can't actually control. Like I can't actually move my vocal cords the way I can move my fingers.
Mm.
So doing a lot of like thinking and not too much thinking, but mindset and thinking, I'm going to just sing with freedom today, or I'm not going to judge my voice today, or something that works for me to not overly focus on my muscles
Yeah.
is thinking about walking through water. That's a technique that my speech therapist gave me. And there is one more thing that I would like to say. In New York last summer, in addition to seeing um, that speech therapist, I also saw an Alexander technique therapist,
Oh,
which
I
was
saw that too.
so,
Yeah.
so changing for me because I'd been having so much neck pain and so much neck tension. And I realized that it was because my shoulders were chronically raised. And then
Yeah.
I started having back pain. If you go to a doctor, they might be like, "Oh, let's get you on some drugs or something." But he told me that I'm going to show you how your back is curved at the bottom and it's causing you pain and abdomen pain. And it's true. And
Mm.
so those techniques really helped me with my pain. But it's important to remember for anyone out there listening that when you go see a doctor, whether it's a massage therapist, Alexander technique, speech therapist, a traditional doctor, a lot of times they're going to treat you in the way that they know. So when I went to speech therapy, she treated me in the way that I knew. When I went to Alexander Technique, he treated my pain in the way that he knew, and massage treated the pain in the way that she knew. In reality, none of those were actually helping with my physical pain. It was somatic pain, something that I needed completely different, which was like maybe a traditional therapist or the podcast that I'm working on now. And that doesn't mean that they didn't help with different issues at the time. Like I told you, I did have issues with my shoulders and my
Mm.
back. And I did learn some important exercises with my speech therapist. But I think it's important to remember that because you can kind of know if this pain is being caused by or it's being caused by Alexander technique, bad posture. It's being caused by MTD. I need to go to a speech therapist, or it's just regular everyday soreness. I'll go to a massage therapist. And for a lot of these people that have been suffering for so long that have found this podcast, The Cure for Chronic Pain, and found this work, it hasn't been any of those things, and it's been something much deeper.
Mm.
So, just important to remember
But maybe
that
those things,
doctors,
yeah, like help to
right,
soothe you and yeah, it's soothing and
right,
self care and. But yeah, you're right. It's not really getting to the root issue, but it can help on the
exactly. And
journey along the way.
oh yeah, doctors can only use what they know,
Yeah.
or therapists can only use what they know. So just important to remember.
Yeah, I think like also like I have some pain today, and the way you look at pain it has changed. I think in the past I didn't know what it was, so I thought it was an injury, something's wrong. So, but now I look at it, I'm like, oh, I'm stressed. Like, oh, I'm meeting with two people with MTD today, and that's like, and I always get nervous. Like my anticipation is something before shows. I always get nervous, even before teaching. Been teaching for 10 years. That's just something about me. So like I know it now, and I know, oh, I need to do my meditation, my breathing. I need to go for like a nature walk, take a hot shower, to like calm my nervous system so that to tend to myself because my body is saying I'm scared right now, and like so I just look at it like that, and you can see that this MTD in us has forced us. It's kind of like broke us apart, and we've come back together in this like beautiful way. I would never be the person I am today without my pain. And I'm so grateful for the journey of having to really like look at myself because I was so desperate, like on my knees, just asking why can I not use my voice? And the other day I was just thinking like we all just want that quick fix because that's the culture too. Like I just want to get back to where I was. But if we think about pain, like I've been thinking about it like what does this mean like as someone who's getting older and like what does it mean to heal? Like say I lose my mother, that's a pain in me. I'll never stop feeling that pain, but my pain will change. So as time goes by, as I get older, yeah, I'll still have that pain within me about my mother who I loved so much, who isn't here anymore. Maybe the same thing is true for like my MTD. Like I don't know if that resonates. It's not about getting to a place where I no longer experience pain, is what I'm trying to say. It's like, how do I look at pain as more of a friend or a teacher? And how can I surrender and let it be there when it wants to be there? And I think like having that sort of relationship with pain can also alleviate us from chronic pain because when we're in chronic pain, at least for me, I was obsessing over it and rejecting it and just saying like this can't be, and so
Yeah,
it just kept it going and go like that neurological loop of it feeding itself. But when I just accept it all and just with loving arms, loving compassion, it's like incredible how I've changed on a soul level, like mind, body, and spirit, just by tending to these different parts of myself. And as someone who I feel very deeply and sometimes to the extreme, I could look at that as a curse. Sometimes I do, but I mostly look at it as a beautiful blessing. Um, and
that's um that's really beautiful and inspiring as someone who is very much still on their journey of healing. So
yeah, well, me
that was
too.
some good words right there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're on the same journey, so the journey never ends, right? And I don't want it to end, and I always want to learn and grow, and even keep an open mind about. Like I have MTD, it's changed as my pain has changed, but like now I'm like curious as I'm doing nervous system work now. I'm like, oh, I'm in a chronic state of fight or flight because the culture is like this go
Mm,
do culture, and it's very like unnatural. I'm like on a screen all the time. I feel like I have to produce and go, and there's so all of these messages sent to me that I'm not okay with just like being who I am as a person. I always have to be like producing things and doing things. So yeah, really my work is like, oh, am I in fight or flight? Like am I in a survival state that's like creates pain?
mm.
For me, yes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
Yeah. I think something that's also helped me recently, like if I think I mentioned a lot of changes in mindset. And I think another thing that has helped me is I'm pretty religious,
yeah.
Christian. And so the whole on my knees thing, why is this happening to me? I spent a lot of
Yeah.
time doing that.
Mm.
Just, I mean, just, and honestly, I hated praying, right? I haven't liked praying anymore because I felt like every time I prayed, all I thought about was the pain that I was going through and I can't sing. And you're like, why am I dealing with this? Like God, just fix me, like fix me right now. Like, what are you doing? Like, just heal me right
It's
now.
like,
Like,
where are
please.
you?
Like,
You've abandoned
yeah.
me.
And so, and I just remember thinking that, and I was like, I just need to be fixed, like right now. And I guess even though I'm still very much not healed yet, I think I'm very grateful that that didn't happen, right? That it doesn't wasn't just like a magic genie and I was fixed right then and there, because there was an underlying cause, obviously, of the way that I processed emotions. And without the pain, I mean, I might have felt so blocked around my girlfriend. I thought I didn't like her, but I knew that that wasn't the case. And so I have started to become more grateful for my pain. And I was praying the other day, and I don't even know if I was praying. I was kind of just sitting there. And, but, I was just kind of just sitting there, and I was in church, and I was thinking, and, you know, something that came to me like was, I've had this fear of being vulnerable, sensitive, weak, especially around people I love, because it hurts so much. And in the past, it has hurt so much, right? Losing people. At least for me, that's something that is my biggest fear: losing people, getting hurt, death. And I realized that even though I may not be able to be so comfortable feeling sensitive and completely vulnerable and completely free and open around people I love, I realized that I could feel that way around God, because, you know, for the first time, it was like, I don't have to be strong. I don't have to rely on my own strength. I can be weak because I am a human. And it just changed so much for me. And I think it's really going to be key I mean, it has been key, but it was only a few days ago. And so I do really think it's going to be key in my recovery. Just that kind of realization, that like, no matter what, like, God will love me. God won't leave me, you know, like the
Yeah.
creator is always there. And I know everyone has like, every faith is a spectrum and everyone has different beliefs, but I think even like, if you're not super religious, even just thinking of it like God or the creator, right, or a higher power, can be really helpful if you have issues like me of go and trying to feel so strong and so tough, and just going above everyone, and then struggling to be sensitive and real around the people that you love.
Yeah.
So that was another mindset or realization that has been like really great for me.
Yeah, there's a lot of
And
strength.
hopefully I'll
Strength.
have,
Sorry.
yeah. No, no,
I
no. I
say,
was just going to say, and hopefully I'll have more. But
yeah.
what were you going to say?
I just say there's like you can look at vulnerability as strength. Like it takes someone strong and courageous to be vulnerable. It's like a very courageous, brave thing to do. Because what are we doing when we're being vulnerable? We're showing our real selves instead of this facade that we've put on to protect ourselves. We show our real selves. So to look at it like that is strength. Like when I see someone being vulnerable, I see it as something strong. And also, you're so right that like when I found that book about spiritual, emotional, and physical tension, I was at the time I was like, oh, I'm missing. I had left the church at the time, and I was like, I'm missing
Hmm.
spirituality. And I
Yeah,
think like the opposite of like trying to control and know all the answers is actually surrendering and trusting and intuition and faith and developing a practice. Like for me, it's not Christianity anymore. For me, it's nature and seeing the divine and God in all things and in people. And it's just like less of I just don't name it anything, but like
yeah,
God is very much in my life all around me. And I just have a spiritual practice, and you do too,
yeah,
and just like living every day working on that spiritual, emotional and physical practice. And I think that's what holistic healing is. And you, in my opinion, you are, and maybe yours too, you are in recovery, and this is what recovery is like, and this is what healing is
yeah,
like. So it's not just like, oh, I'm sick and now I'm well, like they kind of tell you in Western medicine. And that's why a lot of people are sick and not well in this culture. It's actually because it
yeah,
takes, yeah, a change in who you are. And
yeah.
again, on many different levels. And I teach a lot of, when I was thinking, like, if I didn't have any of my pain or my struggle, I would just be like a I would have no substance. There wouldn't be like any juicy goodness to me, no passion or drive to do anything. I would have nothing to say. I wouldn't, yeah, I would just be like maybe that's why when I teach students and I'm like, let them have their pain, let them have their suffering. Don't be codependent, take that away because this is the stuff that's going to get them to figure out what they're capable of. And if you take away someone's pain, you're giving them it's a terrible disservice. Like I see this with one of my friends who's
Mm.
codependent on his father. He's a drug addict and he keeps using and then the the father saves him every time. And I'm like, if you save someone over and over and don't let them figure it out and struggle, it's just like it's that idea of the butterfly when it's in the cocoon. If you actually open the cocoon for it, it dies because
Mm.
it doesn't struggle and it's not in pain and pushing and we need that. Like so, I just it always comes back to that. Like the pain is there
Yeah.
for a reason, and I think God, in my opinions, gave me MTD as like this beautiful reason to actually do the work and to change
Mm.
and to face myself. Like without it, why would I do it? I wouldn't have to.
That's so,
So,
wow, that's beautiful. I never
yes.
thought of it that way. But I agree. I mean, like, I think a lot of times people are like, why is there so much bad in the world? Or why is there human suffering? But I mean, like, the human condition, right, is made for both good and bad in such a sense that we can turn bad things into good, right? Like right now, turning pain and and actually making it a good thing because we're healing ourselves.
Mm,
So I think to say like, oh, we should get rid, like, why is there suffering? Why is there bad? It shouldn't be here, right? To say that you'd also be getting rid of humans. I mean,
mm,
they're so intrinsically related. Um, and this is pretty present in Christianity and obviously Judaism and Islam because they're, connected. And then other religions as well, like the good and the bad and all this stuff, you know.
yeah.
And so I also think I really, that's interesting what you said about like the physical, emotional, and spiritual. I've never really thought of that, but it's true, because I think, you know, all humans deep down, we do have that kind of desire for spirituality, and you see it present. People don't find it in one area, they'll look for it in another area. And we've seen it in all cultures, in all
Mm,
societies throughout all of history, literally. Um, just looking for what they had at the time, right? Searching for that spirituality. And so I think that it really is an important part um, of maybe healing for this. And I love what you said about nature too. I think there are a finite number of things in this life that are intrinsically valuable to humans, and none of them include social media or technology or things like that, right?
mm,
I think, I would put on this list people slash community slash love. Nature is another thing that's intrinsically valuable. I'd put music on there. I'd put exercise on there. I'd put religion, spirituality on there. Um,
I would add like we are creators too. So I feel like it's
yeah,
important that
right,
we create instead of just
right,
buy things and
right.
watch
Like,
what people have created. We should
that's
create
right.
in some sense. Like,
Like
yeah,
purpose, right? So having some sort of like purpose slash career, not necessarily in like the grind. You have to go super
yeah,
hard. For some people, that is, but right, purpose slash career, these are things that are
so,
intrinsically valuable. And so spending our time on these things, you're not going to get necessarily addicted in a way that if you took a drug, you'd get addicted, or social media, how that's addictive, or food, how that is addictive, right?
mm,
Or sex, right? That's another thing that can be like addictive if you have, maybe some trauma associated with that.
mm,
Um, so different things like that can be addictive. So when I feel like as a society, at least in America and the Western world, because we become so developed, we've stopped spending as much time on these things that are intrinsically valuable and have spent a lot more time on things that give us, a temporary satisfaction rather than long-term fulfillment. And it is one of the reasons that we are more unhappy today than we were in the past.
Yeah.
Not the entire story, but one of them.
Seeking outside sources too to like fill this void inside
Right,
instead of going
right.
in and finding everything inside. Yeah, and also the culture, yeah, doesn't support community, and we forget that we're wild. We are animals. We are supposed to, but we become tamed and we're like in zoos. Like our reality is like a zoo. And so no wonder we're going to feel this feeling of dis-ease because we're not in our natural wild habitat. So that's why I always,
Yeah.
especially lately in my life, it's like get into nature, take your shoes off, like put your feet in the grass, like watch the bees fly around, look at the ducks, like and the joy that I experience. And it's I'm coming back to myself as like a wild natural being. Whereas, buying something on Amazon every day is just going to make that feeling of dis-ease grow more and more because it's just, you know,
Yeah.
outside things trying to fill that void inside when we just,
And I think this brings us back to the idea of struggle and the purpose, where our lives have been made so much easier in a lot of ways. Right, you can get whatever, literally, essentially anything you want, whenever you want to your door. Yeah, any food you want, like DoorDash. Um, and so it's been made a lot easier, but we're seeing that that doesn't actually make us happier. That there
no.
is a purpose in, you know, like you said, making something yourself, creating something yourself, right? Just as we were created, we are also meant to create. And like we don't even grow food anymore, unless you're
No.
like a farmer.
Yeah.
So just different things like that, and just looking at how easier isn't necessarily better.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, we're like a culture of too much. It's too much, like too much information, too much
Yep,
overstimulation, buying
way
all these
too much.
programs, all this stuff, like even too much food choices, too much to order. So like I've like the best things in life are free. It sounds corny and simple, but it really comes down to everything that you really need in life to like feel happy now is accessible to you now. And you keep saying mindset that it's so that your thoughts create your feelings, create your behaviors. So happiness and feeling good is all accessible now. And maybe it's a mindset and a choice that we make over and over and over. And
Hmm.
it's a surrender and acceptance to what is. And my latest
Oh,
down the
yes.
journey, as I continue to go down this journey for as long as I go, is what if there isn't bad and good? Like what are the ego, which is not a bad thing in
Mm,
itself, it loves to label things as good or bad because it creates stories so we can stay safe. But where I've been like having some fun, and that's like knowing the answers, right? It's good or bad. But I've been like cultivating a more curious mindset where I'm like, I don't know the answers. Like, for example, since we're talking about the pain, like, what if my MTD, what if this pain is not bad? Or like, what if my friend who is a narcissist, what if she's not bad? Like, what can I see like the multiple truths here? I don't know if I'm making sense, but like it's like we can become so attached to like good joyous feelings and like those are the good ones. And then when we come down here, there's shame and it's like, why am I struggling? That's bad. But like, what if it's not? Like, what if it's
mm,
all this beautiful rainbow canvas, like you were saying, the yin and yang, it all needs each other. There's room for everybody. All the feelings, the pain, the joy, the bliss, the devastation, the grief, the triumphs. And what if one is not good or bad? Like, what if they all are welcome? Is kind of what I'm working at now, which is that can be very relieving, but I think also maybe scary. But yeah, having that curious mindset instead of the mindset of knowing the answers is
I
also
think
pretty cool.
I think that's a really fascinating point you make. You know, it's something that a visualization that I've been doing. I think that I don't know, maybe Nicole Sachs mentioned it, but like I'm imagining that I'm like in a classroom. And for whatever reason, it's my sixth grade classroom, but it's meant to be like kindergarten. and just opening the door and having all of these emotions come in that have been blocked out for so long, and like just imagining that. And I'm like the teacher sitting in the chair, but I'm not the teacher. I'm like my consciousness, like me, and all of these different feelings coming in,
Yeah.
and just kind of accepting and welcoming. Because, yeah, I mean, so many things suck. Like grief sucks, and, you know, despair sucks. Fear is not a pleasant feeling. But I do agree that there is a lot of labeling of good and bad. Um, but it's a lot more complicated than that. I think something that kind of agrees with this point you make is the idea of, what does it mean to be free, right? Does it mean that do whatever you want, whenever you want, and get whatever you want, and then however you feel like it, it's yours? Because that's kind of what we have now. And so, does that definition of freedom really make you happy, or is it the definition of freedom, um, being the ability to make the good and right choice, as in
Mm.
discipline, but
Yes.
discipline in a healthy way, right? Like we'll see this discipline with alcohol, maybe discipline with sex, maybe discipline with anger issues, right? All of these different things, discipline with work, discipline in relationships,
Mm.
sacrifice. And I think that, um, just to bring a little like religion back into this, when you look at like morality that you see present in the Judeo-Christian religions, um, it's kind of based off of that. Like, well, if I can't get wasted every night, how does that make me free, right? And I used to think like this, so no
Mm.
judgment. I used to think like this. Um, then why would I want that? Like, how can you say that Jesus sets me free if because that's one of the bigger quotes of the Bible. How can you say that Jesus sets me free if I can't do this when I want? But in reality, doing whatever you want whenever, like doing whatever you want whenever you want, we're not free because we actually become a slave
Mm.
to those kind of lower animalistic desires. Um, and so having more discipline and the ability to think, is this really the best choice for me? Is this really the right choice for me? That is actually what makes us free.
I
And so
love that.
having more of those kind of morals and values and a little more discipline in your life, if you're really
Mm.
struggling with something like partying, which I was, or struggling with something like drinking or
Mm.
drugs, or maybe you like to eat a lot of sugar, use it as a coping mechanism, and I used that, right? It's kind of like it offers an alternative where you
Yeah.
don't have to be a slave to these things anymore.
Yeah.
You could find more in the intrinsically valuable things like we talked about, and in God. So
Yeah. That's
that's
like
just an idea.
so cool. I was thinking about, I work on discipline a lot, and I think you do too. And I see it as a musician, discipline practices like practicing and making sure I have a diligent practice that I'm coming back to, but in the small, in everything in life. And like the other night, I noticed I wanted to have pizza, but I'm in eating disorder recovery, like I'm an addict in many facets, and I've had to apply a lot of discipline. And I've been in recovery for a long time, but I wanted that pizza, but I knew if I had the pizza the next day, I was going to struggle.
Mm,
And so I looked at it like I'm my own mother now. And this is what a mother would do. Like maybe the kid wants the candy, the mom's saying no because she loves her child and knows that the kid will go up the wall and then have a bad, hard Monday, it's Sunday or something. And I was like, I'm that mother. And but saying no to myself, the kid in me is like, and then we're like, okay. And then I go to bed, and the next day I have a great day because I took care of myself
mm.
through that discipline. So it's a great point. Like, and I've also quit drinking and have quit drugs. And I thought I was putting down something amazing, but through like quitting and that discipline and knowing what's better for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a whole new world. Like,
Hmm.
I was picking up something by putting that down. And
Oh, that's beautiful.
yeah, and I just wanted to go back, rewind to like just saying real quick that feelings are not good or bad. It's actually we've been conditioned like, and as a woman, as a child, if I'm angry, I was conditioned people were telling me anger is wrong, and I actually had no way to express it. It's like, how do you feel safe expressing like crying or anger or these bad emotions? So it's just all, I could talk to you forever. Like we're
Yeah.
clearly on the same path.
Yeah. Yeah,
but
definitely.
but to wrap it all up, I think I'm going to put your PDF in the description, and it's just a great PDF on. You talk a lot about like physical things that help. So like mind, body, and soul healing is not just one thing. Like to heal MTD, I've discovered, yes, it's about physically retraining my voice, my singing and speaking voice. So I am a master at my voice. Like I know all about the voice. I know how to use my voice. I know the right way and the wrong way, and I'm not confused. And I just was hungry for knowledge, so I just kept going to different doctors, different teachers, and learning and growing and learning. And then there's the spiritual components that we were talking about. You know, uh, we're spiritual beings. We all die. That's a scary thing. I've been thinking about that a lot. It's like, how do we make ourselves feel safe in this like crazy life experience? We are spiritual beings, so we need spirituality. And then the emotional work too. So like our thoughts, our feelings, so it's all of these things. And if anyone's feeling overwhelmed, it's a lifelong journey. So just do one thing, and you mentioned it. Don't work so hard that you're making yourself sick in your healing, like you're meditating for 20 hours a day. Like I've done all of that myself.
Same.
Where I'm
Same.
drinking like these smoothies that I'm like throwing up my mouth of like, I'm like, why don't I just eat stuff that tastes good, that's healthy? But there's so much that goes into it. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful journey, and it's a lifestyle, is what we're doing. And I lost my train of thought, but it's nothing to fear, and
Right.
it
Right.
makes my life just, I feel I'm still someone who has anxiety, but I just feel like I can really take care of myself on a physical, a spiritual, and a mental capacity. I can take care of myself
Definitely.
because of
Yeah.
MTD. So yeah, it
Yeah.
does get better.
Definitely.
And by talking to you today, like I feel like you're very far along on your healing journey. And uh, I don't know if you've heard of like the TMS. You have, because you listen to Nicole Sachs. I'll send you the link to the TMS Wiki free pain program. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Mm-mm.
It's just so cool. Like I sent it to everybody. It's Nicole's work, and she worked with Alan or John Serno. I think that was who she worked with, who is part of the Pain Psychology Center in the West Coast somewhere. And it's just like it's backed up by science, this work. And I'll send you the link. I'll put it in the description just because it's so fun. You can do like one. It's like a 29-day program, all free. It's just like a chapter of reading a day, and you can just apply it to your life. But you're already applying it. It's like it's really mindset work.
Mm.
So that's a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. You should definitely send that to me.
Yeah, and
I'd be interested.
I should start the journaling. I feel like I just listened to Nicole like yesterday, and
Yeah.
maybe this is God telling me to
Yes.
start doing the talk speak stuff.
Yeah. For me, it's
Yeah.
been like really important, but it's also like that's what, based on what's happened and what I've been through, that's what is really kind of crucial
Yeah.
um, for me. And so, because it is like very complex, and I would definitely recommend trying it out and seeing if it's a good technique for you. Ultimately, like it is going to be multiple things and different mindset, like different mindset shifts, and different journaling and looking back at different losses and then just viewing it holistically, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, and it's not a one
So,
size fits all. So just like kind of following like what you just follow this thing, try it out, and then follow another thing. And that's like my journey. And then as you learn more, you grow more and you learn to seek out more specific things. Like my current seeking is nervous system, health, ego work, like and more intuition work where I can trust my natural intuitive self instead of the culture we're raised in is based off the ego of like knowing the answers and controlling. And it's like, I don't want any of that anymore. I want to like trust in God and myself. And
Mm.
I want to not know the answers. I want to be stay curious and open. And I just want to grow in that place. And maybe nothing's good or bad. Maybe it's all welcome here. And
Right. I think
and yeah.
I have like a widget on my phone on my home screen, and I just changed it recently to something that is kind of more relevant for me now, um, and something that I realized from the podcast. And it says, well, there's two things. The first one is that something that Nicole said, the obstacles in the path are the path. I was like, phew,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
that's
that's
kind
kind
of
of what you said, like understanding that it is just all part of the path, and obviously we don't know what the future holds, um, but just kind of embracing that. And then the other thing is that it says God does not want you to be in control; He wants you to be free, and
I love
that
that.
grasping onto things.
Hmm.
And I was at a retreat, like uh, for my school, like a religious retreat, and that was one of the talks, and it was like, whoa, just the idea of control and this grasp that we have onto things. And I realized that I'm holding on to so many things tightly, and that is not, how we can live our life, because ultimately we have control over a few things at
Hmm.
most. There's so much that we don't have control over.
Yeah,
So just those two pieces of, you know, information before we
I love
leave.
that. I'm gonna write that down. Do you want to be in control or do you want to be free? Is that the
Yeah.
that's a beautiful mantra. 'Cause, I'm a type A, like wanting perfectionist type, but I'm in recovery, but
Hmm.
it's just like my go-to to want to control, and it
Yeah,
creates a lot of fear. So yeah, to trust.
definitely. Yeah.
So it's beautiful, and God, this conversation was amazing, and you're doing so good, and you're so young, and like I can only imagine where you'll be like when you're my age. Like you'll be like I don't know, no, you're just can
You
only go
can't
up
even
from here.
imagine.
So yeah,
I feel like I'm getting so old already as I approach
yeah,
my 21st birthday.
yeah. You'll continue
But
to think that, and I thought I was old. Now I'm 37, and then I don't know, and then like
but
looking
it's
into like time, what is time, and maybe we're eternal beings, and each chapter
yeah.
of life, like 37 is really fun, and like my 20s were very stressful and hard for me. My 30s are awesome. My 40s are gonna be amazing, and it's all mindset, right? So just looking at it like the curious wonder that it is, and
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well,
so
it was great speaking with you.
yeah, you too,
And
Charlotte, and thanks for helping so many people with this amazing talk and your PDF that I'll link below. And because infusing hope and belief is some of the most powerful medicine. And
definitely. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, thank you so much for
okay,
inviting me. I'm really glad that we were able to connect
yeah,
and
me too.
just kind of share our experiences with each other. It was
Yeah,
really, really fire.
it was awesome. Yeah, I'll post
Yeah.
everything below, and we're gonna go in 1 second. I just want to say you should watch the podcast, or you should listen to the podcast because you seem like you're into it. Tell me about your pain if you've heard of that.
Hmm.
That
I
that's
haven't.
it's through kind of Nicole. It's the same thing. I'll send it to
Okay.
you, but I'll link it
Send it.
below. And have an amazing rest of your Sunday. And it was amazing connecting.
Thank you so
All
much. We'll
right,
talk soon.
bye.
Bye.